millennial respondents prefer a tech-savvy experience where the salesperson's comfortable navigating the technology, including a remote meeting. So we're in a place now where it's, we've evolved this experience, the experience economy book, which was primarily a physical experience, and now we're amplifying it with technology. So let's look at this one. The virtual meeting experience, I'll call it. This is another strategy you might consider. Here's what I see in most sales calls and in virtual. They're one of two ends of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum is the death by PowerPoint, right? You're going to sit through this and you're going to like it, right? And then the other end of the virtual meeting spectrum is cameras on, no graphics, nothing's happening. It's like this thing. It's basically a glorified phone call. It's a phone call with a camera. It's pretty bad. So I want you to think, if you're drilling down your experience, I really do believe what happens in that virtual meeting is part of the experience. When someone says they have Zoom gloom, there's no such thing as Zoom gloom. There's bad meeting gloom, but there's no such thing as Zoom gloom. So let me give you a few strategies. I hesitated showing these because I don't want to pigeonhole your thinking. I want you to just think overall about your experience. And I'm going to give you a few low-tech examples. Some of you are going to be way more advanced than what I'm going to show you. You're probably using something like Prezi, or even what Miro's doing now with some really interactive virtual meeting experiences is very cool. But let me share with you a few of mine. I'll show you a video demonstration. So you might just write these down if you're not doing these. In and out of screen share is this. You have your camera on, you're having a conversation, you bring a graphic or something into the meeting, so now you have a visual as part of the meeting, you talk about it for the appropriate time, it helps the communication, but then you take the visual away to eliminate the distraction and have more of a conversation. Okay, that's in and out of screen share. Whiteboarding is whiteboarding, right? The thing that's killing me now is I see people who 5 years ago, they would not hesitate in a meeting, in a physical environment, to grab a marker and go up and whiteboard something on an easel or on a whiteboard, or even in a coffee shop, they'll grab an easel, a legal pad or a napkin. And those people 3 years into this are still not whiteboarding. It's just a natural way to communicate authentically in a meeting that creates an experience. And the last one is floating deck that I'll show you. So floating deck is basically, picture this. And here's how I came to this. I was in meetings, and I'd be having the typical meeting, and something would come up in the meeting, and I'd be like, oh, I wish I had a graphic for this. And I'd be like, I do have a graphic for that, but it's in the cloud in my drive somewhere, and it's like the meeting's happening, and I don't want to go find it. So over time, I realized there were certain graphics I would like to have quick access to. And so I created something called a floating deck, meaning I created a deck. Before the meeting starts, I open it up and it's floating off to the side, right? And if something happens in the meeting, I can say, you know what, that's a good point. I have a graphic here. Let me just pull this up. I wasn't sure if we would get to this. And I pull it up, and now and here's what my floating deck looks like, right? So these, I have 29 slides. These are the ones that I have a high likelihood at a meeting to have come up. I just don't know which ones. And I don't go through all 29. I have 2 or 3 that come up in the average meeting. I would highly encourage you have a floating deck, those graphics that help aid the conversation that you can talk someone through to change the experience and ultimately the value creation, because if we're doing this effectively, there's probably some discovery happening, and they're like, that's a good point. So let me show you a screencast. Ken Harris is here. Ken and I recorded a call a few weeks ago. Ken's a 20-year Sandler veteran. And Ken, can I mention yeah, just give me a nod. Yeah, he said yeah. So Ken and I are friends for a long time now, so I can say this, but I said, I like Ken because he's a slow learner with a checkbook. And so he keeps coming to Sandler, and I hope the checks are still working there, Ken, after that, but hey, I'm slower than Ken. Ken's a smart dude. I can't get out of this, so I'll just move on. Okay, so So this is Ken and I. So here's the setup. Ken and I are on this call. In fact, I left the sound out. I'll just narrate it so you can see what's happening. So we're talking, and Ken and I are, I can't get away from this, Ken. Let's go back to this. Okay, so Ken and I are talking. He said something about prospecting. I'm like, Ken, see how I'm looking around? I'm like, Ken, I have a graphic here. I'm not sure exactly where it's at. Let me pull it up. It's somewhere here, and yeah, so with prospecting, are you seeing the graphic there, Ken? He's like, yeah. So, there's really a few different causes of prospecting issues, and for some people, if we really look at this graphic, for some people it's like an attitude mindset issue. And when I say an attitude issue, it could be call reluctance, it could be fear of rejection, it could be they're even in a comfort zone, or something's going on with their mindset that's affecting the prospecting problem. So sometimes it's like an attitude kind of mindset thing. For other people, it's more like, it could be behavior, like the actions they're doing, the number of calls, their cookbook, the sorts of things that they should be tracking. And for other people, it's not even that, it's technique. It's like they're trying to figure out, like, what's the script to get through the gatekeeper? What kind of technique do I use in an electronic communication? How do I do a better pre-recorded video? So they're trying to figure out like the techniques. And so for Ken, for you, what would you say the biggest one is? And Ken's like, it's all of them. I'm like, all of them? So okay, so let's just talk about that. What are you thinking? And so then I take it away. So that's in and out of screen share. Floating deck was there, and I whiteboarded on the screen. Now I cut that video short. I usually wouldn't do the graphic that short. I would give more time. But that's what it flows like. So I know you're looking at it. You're like, that's really low tech, and it's fairly basic. But I have seen countless calls where I've seen people's physiology change, and they're leaning in, and they're looking, and they're definitely not going into Zoom gloom. You do in and out of screen share, some whiteboarding, and some interaction like that, the last thing you get is Zoom gloom. They are actively engaged in the experience, and they won't feel like it was one of those calls that went on forever. And then you can whiteboard, you can just pull a whiteboard up, so later in the call, Ken and I are talking about his org chart. And I'm like, okay, you're telling me about this. Ken, I'm a visual. Can I just map this out? And Ken's like, yeah. So I said, okay, let me just pull a whiteboard up, Ken. So let me just draw this out so we could talk this through, right? So you're at the top of the food chain, right? He's like, yeah. So I write the Ken down. And so I said, okay, you got like 2 managers, you said? And he's like, yeah, I got 2 managers. So then I do like the thing there. I said, don't tell me the names now. We don't need that. Just I want to understand the organization. And then you got a bunch of salespeople under there, right? He's like, yeah, I got a bunch of salespeople. So once again, that goes way longer than that. To not whiteboard and visually engage and change that kind of interactivity and experience, it's highly valuable, and you will see the difference when you're talking to people. Does that one make sense? Okay. Pre-recorded video advantage is the second part of amplifying ourselves with technology, our USX. I learned this by taking my car in recently for a leak. I went in the garage, and I noticed there was this green stuff on the garage floor, and it was a liquid, and I'm like, I don't think that's good. I'm not a mechanic, but I was like, I don't think that's good. So I took it in, and who here has gotten a call from a mechanic after you brought it in with a problem, and you get that call where it's like, it's $1,200. You're like, what? I thought it was an air filter, right? And so I think car dealers realized that there was a lack of trust in the process. So when I took my car in recently, this is what I got. Okay? So this is the mechanic, and we're not hearing the sound, but the mechanic's narrating. He says, okay, I'm noticing this thing, and I'm going on here, and here's your problem. This is where your problem is. I'm like, that's pretty good, actually. Talk about, look at this. Is this disgusting, right? Blank check. Blank check. Just fix it. But there was no mystery that I had a problem. And they must have figured out along the way, video is a really good way to communicate certain messages that can be reviewed and played back. And so when I saw that my mechanic is hot using pre-recorded video, I'm like, well, and when I talk to salespeople, this room excluded, I don't know, 1 out of 10 will tell me that they're regularly using some kind of pre-recorded video as part of their messaging and communication. And it changes the experience. I think we've all been trained, right? We're all living in a TikTok, YouTube Reels world where people are being communicated at with video. and they want to watch it on their time. Because if you think of something like this with AMC and Netflix, so years ago, the Batman movie came out, and AMC would say, come on in, here's the 4 times today you can watch it. You're going to watch it on our schedule, $20 popcorn, right? Cool. Now we've all been trained with Netflix or Hulu or Apple TV. I kind of get things when I want them. I don't know, why would I have to be on someone else's schedule? And we're seeing that translate into the sales experiences. People want things like when they want to watch them. They don't always want to run a synchronous meeting. Sometimes they like asynchronous. They like the idea of us putting something in a pre-recorded video they can watch on their own time. And so I like Vidyard. If you're not familiar with the technologies, I'm technology agnostic on this, whatever you want. But the technology is so easy to access now, to be able to communicate. Because let's not forget this, selling is communicating. At the most basic level, we're just talking about a way to communicate and trying to figure out what's the best channel. Is it a synchronous live face-to-face meeting? Is it a virtual meeting? Is it a pre-recorded video? What's the best channel for the kind of communication I'm trying to achieve? And so part of the experience, I think, starts with the way it shows up in an email. So instead of looking like the 121 emails they get that day, it's going to show up as a visual that is moving, typically animated in the screen, and they can click on it and they can access it. Right? And so this is an example, by the way, of an upfront contract. So I did my upfront contract, see you tomorrow, time, purpose, their agenda, our agenda, and then outcomes, anything else you want, let me know. So if you're looking for one place to use pre-recorded video in the process, Upfront Contract is a great place to start. Super easy way to do it. You can also do it at different places handheld, so I really like doing it. This is O'Hare Airport, getting ready for a trip, doing the Upfront Contract for the meeting for the next day, basically saying, hey, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, time, purpose, their agenda, our agenda, outcomes kind of stuff. Here is a trade show. Here I was at PAC Expo, and here's the cool thing about this one. The booth behind me is the person I was sending the message to. I mean, you want to create a different engagement experience. Who here does trade shows? Anyone do trade shows here? Yeah. The next trade show, you get your Vidyard app all set, whatever app you use, you click it, and you start going to each booth that you talk to someone in, and you record that. I guarantee you it gets opened. And they will feel differently about that communication message. You know what they're going to get Monday morning after the trade show? 100 emails from sales reps, and they're all going to say the same thing. Good to meet you. We have a great value proposition. Can we set a time that's convenient for you? Please let me know. Attached is our brochure. I mean, right? So this is completely different. And there's a value in it. It's like there's something there. One last one. This is a screenshot. I blacked out the name of the company, but I did a follow-up to a meeting with 3 decision makers from Halloween of last year. And these 3 decision makers were there, and at the end of the meeting, I said, you know, we're kind of tight on time. Let me do a video recap for this, and also let me include a couple things we didn't get to, because we're kind of a little, tough on time here. So they're like, okay, cool. So I got an upfront contract to send the video, first of all, which is key. And look at the time there. It's 8 minutes and 11 seconds. You'd think, who's going to watch 8 minutes and 11 seconds? So I sent it off, but I knew I had an upfront contract, so I had a good shot. I sent it off. 3 people were in the meeting. A week later, I go before, just checking on it, and this is a screenshot. There were 10 views. So I'm thinking, that's pretty cool, right? For me, that's cool that 10 people watch it. I had all these influencers off to the side watching it, but then I really thought about it, and I realized there was value creation there too. Because what most salespeople do is they say, we just had a meeting, you're the decision maker, but you have to go meet with people internally, the work's on you now. You're gonna come up with a synopsis, you have to relearn it, you gotta go meet in a meeting with some pressure, and you have to regurgitate what I just did. I realize what I'm doing with these is I'm creating value. I am taking the onus off of creating that next meeting off of that buyer and helping them with the video, and then they can forward along. There's value creation. I'm amplifying it with technology. The last one, you've heard the recurring theme here. is Sandlerize everything. Sandler's like the microchip that runs the USX.
Thank you for watching this highlight video from the Sandler Summit. You can join us for the next Sandler Summit in 2024, March 19th and 20th at the Orlando World Center Marriott. Register now at sandler.com/summit.